to the Mind Shift Movement Podcast with your host, Alan Johnson. On this podcast, Alan will be sharing with you empowering, effective, and actionable knowledge within the health, fitness, and mindset space to help you make the progress and growth that you desire from your life so you'll become the very best version of you, physically, mentally, and emotionally. So now, get ready to dive into today's episode.
Hey, and welcome to the Mind Shift Movement Podcast with me, your host, AJ. And on this podcast, I'm going to be sharing with you some information of the journey that we've gone through over the last 2 years, just over 2 years, going from a brand new business to getting onto the property ladder as a family. We're currently a three at the moment, but the fiance is pregnant and we're due another baby in around 5 or 6 weeks time. So it's been a pretty intense journey. And I will start off by simply sharing like how my business even come about to begin with. So basically just over 2 years ago, I was in a job that I wasn't happy in. So I was working in recruitment. So I really loved the industry, but I'd moved companies closer to home for various different reasons, and that company just wasn't right for me. You know, when you have that feeling, you know, you don't feel happy, you don't feel excited about doing that job, working for a certain company, and it just wasn't sitting well with me. And we literally had like 5 months ago before we was going to have our first child, which is Alfie, who's 2 now. So it was a bit of a challenging time back then, because I was in a situation where, you know, I've had a goal for a long time to get onto the property ladder. You know, it's been a vision for years. And I was at this time in my life where I was about to become a dad for the first time, a parent. And I was in a job I wasn't happy in, but I knew that if I stayed in that job, it would have made things a lot easier to get on the property ladder. You know, they tend to only need like 3 months worth of, you know, kind of being on the payroll to be able to get onto the property ladder. Whereas self-employed, you know, people were saying I need 2 years books, 3 years books, etc. You know, different people give you different information. So I was in this situation. I wasn't happy in my job. 5 months ago, until I was going to become a dad, and I decided to quit my job and literally have no income. So eliminate the income I had with a baby on the way. Hey Andrew, I hope you're good. So literally my idea was to, you know, I wanted to launch a business, and that first initial business was personal training. You know, I was really into my training. You know, I love to share value online. I love to inspire people. I'm trying to motivate people, and personal training was kind of the business for me at that time. And it started okay. I was still waking up at 5 a.m. I'm a bit of an early morning guy. I still struggle to wake up in the mornings, but I know that that's when I'm my most productive and most effective. So I didn't have any clients at the time, but I was still waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning, training myself, eating healthy, sharing what I was training, what I was eating online, on social media, documenting the journey like I still do today, and just trying to share as much value as possible with people that needed it. And it was a bit of a struggle going from like being in recruitment to quitting the job and then just starting a brand new business from scratch, because I'm someone that enjoys keeping busy, and it was an interesting time going from a very busy job in recruitment, and anyone that's worked in recruitment before would kind of know what the industry's like. It's very full on. It's actually pretty much one of the closest times I've felt like I've had my own business was working in recruitment. But obviously it wasn't my own business. So I kind of love being busy, I love being occupied. So it was a bit of an interesting time going from a very busy job in recruitment to simply just trusting the process, trusting in me, trusting that things would work out and I would go from an empty schedule with no clients to just believing in myself and, giving value and being consistent and eventually building a business from scratch. So I really had to, trust the process. But I started to build up my client base, helping people get results, and of course start making some money for myself as well to, keep my head above water, support my family and feed us and pay the bills, And the goal and vision in my mind was always to get onto the property ladder and, support my family and, hopefully one day leave a property in Alfie's hands or any other children we have to help support them at a later date. And it's been such a crazy journey. It really, really has. So the first time the solicitor come around to see us was about 18 months ago. And I want to big him up because he's a really, really awesome guy. So his name is Greg Potts and he's literally gone over and above for us, like so much. So his name's Greg Potts. If you want his details, just message me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, or email me and I can pass on his details. But honestly, guys, he's gone over and above what a mortgage broker should do. And he's done so much for us. So if you need a mortgage advisor or mortgage broker, then he's your man. You can message me for his details. We've literally looked at it feels like hundreds of properties online, and we've gone to plenty of viewings, in person as well to go and look at properties. And we just couldn't find the right location. We couldn't find the right property for us. We was in a bit of a mindset of, what, do we want a house? Do we want a flat? And where should we live? And everything like that, anyone that's ever bought a property or even rented a property, you have all of these questions going on in your head, right location, right property for you, what are you looking for in a property? And of course, we had to go through all of that ourselves. And one of the first hurdles for us that I want to share with you is basically I was using just 1 year's books. So 1 year's books of business because that's all I could use. I couldn't use my old job because I started a new business. I had to use a 1 year's tax return. Okay. And that kind of limits what lenders would lend us the money to get the mortgage, okay? And sometimes this can also bump up the interest rate. So that was the kind of first hurdle for us, knowing that it was the best decision for me to start my own business because that's what I wanted to do. But as a consequence of doing that, first of all, only being able to use 1 year's books because that's all I had. And secondly, because of that reason, then we would potentially have to pay more interest on the loan that we're going to get. And that brings me on to another challenge that we had. So basically, my fiance had a mystery CCJ that turned up out of the blue. She didn't know nothing about it. She had parked somewhere in Southend, and 1 week people were allowed to park there for 4 hours, and then within a few weeks they had changed the time period to 2 hours, so half the time. She didn't know. At that time Alfie was very, very young, so 3 or 4 months old. She was out shopping, changing him in the car, feeding him in the car, not knowing that there was a new 2 hour rule. And basically she got a parking ticket that she didn't know about because it was an automated one, but she didn't get any letters, and that led on to a CCJ that she didn't ever know about because she didn't get no letters. Okay, so you can imagine when we've gone to see what we can lend and everything like that, and it come up failed. We didn't know why. So then we started looking into our credit checks, and I was okay. And it was actually Shannon's, which showed up she had a CCJ. So this was like back last year around August time. Shannon ended up having to go to court and fought the case, and she won the case, and which was amazing, because it was a lot of stress at the time, especially for Shannon, of course. And after like 6 months, we continued looking. We thought the CCJ was gone because she won in court and everything like that. She didn't get the money back that she had to invest to go to court and everything like that. And then when we actually found another property that we really loved, 6 months later, we were denied again because the CCJ was still on there. So it was like literally another 3 weeks of calls to the courts, to the council, to all sorts of people for like 3 weeks to get this bloody CCJ that she didn't even know about, cleared off of her name, which was so frustrating at the time. That property fell through anyway. They actually pulled out. It wasn't us. And of course, it was a disappointing time. But after lots of calls, lots of emails, the CCJ was finally cleared, which was great news. Which then brings me on to the next thing. And I'm sure a lot of you are going to remember this. Let me know if you do. Brexit or Brexit, whatever you want to call it. So Brexit was going on forever. Of course, as a personal trainer, I am very much into the gym. And every time I would go train in the mornings at DW Fitness, the news would be on. And every single day, I would see the massive headlines about Brexit this, Brexit that, and there's going to be a recession next week. And we were hearing it all the time, like a weekly basis of people that are coming out saying Brexit's going to cause a recession and people are going to lose jobs and the housing market's going to crash and all of these different thoughts and ideas of what people were saying, So in our own heads, we're not property experts. So, who do you kind of listen to? So we had to get through that time, and we just kind of followed our gut feeling, and that was to still pursue and get onto the property ladder. So yeah, we had to get through Brexit, but we got through that together, and of course, absolutely fine. The next challenge we kind of had was basically, it was my first year of business. Okay, so I had to do like a tax return, of course, and because it was my first year of first year self-employment, when I did my tax return, I had to pay 18 months worth of tax in January 2020. So January just gone, okay? We'd been saving up for, a long time, like 2 years, 2.5 years to get enough money to get onto the property ladder. And then January 2020, I was stung with a 5-figure tax bill, which was a massive shock, of course. Who really wants to pay 5 figures in tax? And that was 18 months worth of tax for me. And it was, I kind of knew it was coming. I had rough figures in mind, but that was a bit of a sting for us, having to get, a deposit together for a property, knowing all of the fees that comes with it and fitting a property out, and then having to pay this 5-figure tax bill in January 2020, so just a few months ago. And then also on top of that, I'd have to pay another 6 months worth of tax at the end of June. So basically, I'm having to pay 24 months worth of tax within 6 months, which is absolutely crazy. But this is what I've had to do and go through, and anyone else that's done this with, a 1 year's worth of books with their business, they would completely understand, this process, what we've had to go through. So basically, yeah, having to pay 24 months worth of tax within a 6-month period is a bit of a shock to the bank balance. And I'm sure that would be for most people. As well as this, we've had some pretty poor advice. And I'm going to go through some of them. The first one being like put every penny into the property as a deposit. And the thing with that advice, I kind of get it in some ways, that the more you put in, then you're going to bring down the amount of money that you're having to lend, and that's fine. I completely get that. But when that advice was given to us, this was before the lockdown come about. This was before the gyms closed, and putting every single penny into this property would have left us as a family in a very, very bad situation. So I really count my blessings that me and my fiance spoke about this. We had many conversations about should we put down 5%, 10%, 15%, should we put every penny into the property, and hope that business is going to be okay, hope that her work life's going to be okay, and just hope everything's going to be fine, when in reality no one knew a coronavirus was going to come about. Or maybe someone did, but no one knew a lockdown was going to come about. I didn't know the gyms were going to be forced to close like 6-7 weeks ago, and I didn't know that my income was going to be massively hit. And this is why I'm truly grateful that we did what we felt was right for us. We got a lot of advice from many people, and we decided to put a less of a deposit down. We still went with 10%, so that brought down interest rates, that brought down the amount that we was lending, and we're so glad that we went with that decision. Another piece of bad advice that we've had over the period of looking at properties was to buy big and use the government 20% scheme. So if you haven't heard of this scheme, I don't know like the full details into it, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically how it works is like you only put in 5%, the government will give you the 20% to put down as a deposit, and you then only take out a 75% mortgage on the property, and I think it's around 5 years that you don't have to pay that back to the government. So you only pay a mortgage on 75% loan of the property, which is great. But then what happens is after 5 years, when you have to start paying back the government loan as well as the mortgage, then I think a lot of people can end up in a pretty bad place. And that's the main reason we kind of didn't want to do that. I'm sure that the government scheme with the 20%, you have to go for a new build as well, which we didn't want to do, because after speaking to various different people, is the most common thing that people say is it's a convenience thing, because the property looks lovely, it's all done up for you, it's ready to move in, and it looks great, but the plots are usually smaller, the rooms are usually smaller, and you pay a premium price for new build property. So that's why we kind of didn't want to go down that route. Another piece of not so good advice for us was to buy sooner, and to use, buy sooner and just go with the half buy half rent scheme. Again, it's a fantastic scheme for a lot of people, but we wanted to hold out and just basically own a property outright, get a full mortgage on a property, and that was the best decision and choice for us. So we waited patiently and simply used the Help to Buy ISA. So many of you might have one of these set up already, and it's been so useful because it was basically free cash. I can't remember exactly how much we kind of got, but it was a few £1,000s, nothing more than 3,000, but it definitely, it's free cash. We saved up lots of money in the Help to Buy ISA for a good couple of years, and We could use Shannon's ISA and my ISA together, so they're well worth doing if you haven't got one set up already, if they're still doing them, that is. And that really come in handy. Now, of course, we are experiencing COVID-19 and a lockdown at this time, and who knew this would come in 2020? And we are so thankful that we, held on to some cash for a rainy day, especially with baby number 2 coming as well. So the kind of strategy we use to go ahead with this property, we're really kind of glad of what we did and the decisions that we made. Along our journey to finally getting onto the property ladder, there's been so many sacrifices as well. So as well as the challenges of what we've gone through, there's just been so much kind of sacrifice at the same time. So stuff like skipping trips away, staying home instead, not buying many luxuries, just trying to get by on the basics, not buying too many clothes or, nights out drinking. I'm trying to avoid eating out as much as possible and just limiting days out. Do you know what I mean? Just trying to find different ways that we could save money and make those small sacrifices. And then over time, those small sacrifices will add up. And of course, we'll be able to just save more money and be able to get onto the ladder quicker. And as well as the sacrifices, it's just being so focused on that end prize, being consistent with business regardless of how tough life has been at times, because it really has been challenging. Anyone that follows my journey, there has been some real tough times, and I'm someone that likes to share the wins as well as the losses and as well as the setbacks and the challenges, because it's real. There's a lot of people on social media that you'll watch and you'll follow, and it just looks like a perfect picture all the time. And that's just not reality. So I prefer to share the good, bad, and the ugly. Hence why I'm sharing this with you about the property journey, because we could easily just share a photo of us with the keys outside our property saying how wonderful life is, blah, blah, blah. When in reality, we've had to go through a lot of challenges, a lot of setbacks, a lot of upset to be in the position that we are now. And it's real. And hopefully you can take something away from this and maybe learn something, and it will help you with your property journey as well. So around this time last year, my dad passed away as well. So the first time I've had to deal with the grievance of losing a parent. And I kind of felt like the world was just on my shoulders, because at the time we had a young baby to look after, little Alfie, a family to support, and a business to continue running as well. I'm in the fitness and mindset coaching industry. So I kind of have to be at my best, and try and inspire people, try and help people improve their own life. So it was really tough at that time, and this is what it takes to achieve our goals, is ultimately remaining consistent regardless of what's going on in our external world. So consistency and persistency in the right areas within our life will pay off eventually. We just have to continue being consistent, and we will get to the goals that we want to achieve. So we moved in just over 2 weeks ago of recording this Facebook Live and this podcast, and we're very happy. And we've been able to prepare this new home ready for baby number 2, which is due in like 5 or 6 weeks time. We are super excited. But the lockdown, a massive positive for us has been, moving into this new property. And it wasn't in a bad state anyway, but you know how it is. If you've ever, when you've moved into a property before, you just want to get it ready, don't you? Especially if you've got a newborn baby coming as well. You want to be in, get the place decorated nice. We're getting all the hospital bags ready and the baby's room ready, and we're so grateful. So if any of you have any questions and you want to know a bit more details about what I've mentioned or what I've shared, then I'm more than happy to help where I can. I really would love to see more new business owners, go on and become first-time buyers and secure their place within the housing market. I really, really do. So thanks for tuning in, everyone, and I'll catch up with you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Mind Shift Movement Podcast with Alan Johnson. Make sure you join Alan's free Facebook community group, the Mind Shift Movement Podcast Community. Please support the show by clicking subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Share this episode with at least one friend that would benefit from it, and share the episode on your social media stories. Please go and leave us a 5-star review to help us reach out to more potential listeners, and we really look forward to bringing you the next episode.